The drive is being launched today at the KICC. Our crews on the ground shall be giving periodic updates on what that event is, what's happening with that event. But far from that, remember, you can be a part of the conversation that we're having here in studio. We're asking you on Twitter, will you be appending your signature in favor of the BBI referendum bill? Will you be appending your signature in favor of the BBI referendum bill? Amat Tricks Ingado. The hashtag to use is KTN Morning Express. And remember, you can also tag the KTN News website so as to make your views visible. Now, we have a comment here by Jacob Abere Matlala, who says, timing of BBI process is now. Whoever is opposing the process doesn't live in Kenya or forgot what happened in 2013 and 2017. It is now reforms to be done. Political imaginations by certain quarters need to know they are beneficiary of election spoils. Let us know what you think. Be a part of the conversation. But before we get into that discussion, there is some breaking news that's coming to us at the newsroom. Coast Water Works Development Agency Board Chair and former Kilifi South Member of Parliament Mustafa Id is dead. Id is said to have died at a Mombasa hospital where he was undergoing treatment. Id was a veteran journalist before plunging himself into the world of politics, where he was elected Member of Parliament for Kilifi South in 2013 on an ODM ticket. It would later lose the seat in 2017 after decamping to the Jubilee Party. Coast Waterworks Development Agency Board Chair and former Kilifi South Member of Parliament Mustafa Id is dead. Id is said to have died at a Mombasa hospital where he was undergoing treatment. Id was a veteran journalist before plunging himself into the world of politics, where he was elected Member of Parliament for Kilifi South in 2013 on an ODM party ticket. Id would later lose the seat in 2017 after decamping to the Jubilee Party. May his soul rest in peace. Right now, as promised, we're going to be discussing that, and to get us into that particular discussion is this story. The stage is set now for the launch of the BBI signature collection that will officially kick off the referendum campaign for constitution amendment. Now, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, has already approved a format the BBI Secretariat had proposed that should be used for the collection of the signatures. Duncan Hayemba reports on the exercise that will raise campaign tempo ahead of the 2022 general election.
It is all systems go for Wednesday's launch of at least 1 million signature collection from registered voters across the country in support of the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020. This after the country's poll agency IEBC gave a nod to this proposed format or template that should be used for the collection of the signatures exercise. Perhaps being cautious not to disappoint ODM leader Raila Odinga like his 2016's Okoa Kenya initiative that flopped, IEBC has given explicit instructions that state to enable the voter verification process and to ensure completeness of the supporters' records, all the fields in the said approved format or template should be duly filled as provided. End of quote. Co-chairs of the BBI Secretariat, Jubilee's Dennis Waweru and ODM's Junet Mohammed, held a final meeting with Handshake's BBI co-principal Raila Odinga ahead of the launch on Wednesday at the Kenyatta International Convention Center KICC, that will be presided over by both principals, President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, after last week's false start.
Wave it to all of us as the fanfare is being played.
This will be the third time Kenya will be conducting a plebiscite led by a sitting president. The first was the 2005 and 2010 referenda conducted during former President Mwai Kibaki's tenure. The BBI initiative will be the first referendum to be done under President Uhuru Kenyatta. Duncan Hayemba, KTN News.
Right, Honourable Sakwa Bunyasi Nambale, Member of Parliament, as well as Honourable Anthony Alwatch, MP Madare, are forming our panel. We expect Gabriel Muthuma to join us momentarily. He is a governance expert. I'll throw this over to you, Honourable Bunyasi. What does this moment mean now that we've gotten to a point where we are moving on and trying to gather those 4 million, as they said, signatures?
Tex, I think this, for me, is just one step in the same path where we were headed. It just confirms that the process towards the referendum is going to be real. It also does worry me to some extent that, unfortunately, the head of state, who is now the supreme guardian of the constitution under which he swore, is now a partisan player, but he's a partisan player because he's the Jubilee party leader. So obviously, as Jubilee party leader, he's completely within his rights to play an active role in this, together with the Honorable Raila Odinga. But as head of state, it would have been neater if he was not part of the direct protagonists in this process. It makes it a bit messy. Anyhow, the collection simply means that the proponents are dead serious on getting this to be done. The only thing that worries me, Trix, concerns me rather, is that the population, and for those who are signing on, it means that they're saying they endorse and agree to this process. Unfortunately, the people who have had access either to the report or to the referendum bill itself are a very small group.
Yeah.
Probably, we are doing so in the full knowledge that will be people relying on what others have read for them. My feeling is that the specifics of this referendum bill are going to be known progressively. People are going to learn more and more of it as we go along, and they'll continue doing that even beyond the referendum. And that has consequences for the kind of contest you might expect at the election. But I won't go there for now.
Okay.
I think now it simply means that people are willing to buy into what their leaders are saying.
Yes. Honourable Olwach, as a proponent, what does this stage of the process mean to you?
Yes, thank you. I think it is a culmination of a process that began, I think, on the 9th of March at the steps of Arambe House.
Yes.
And you remember that there was a 9-point agenda. And in the 9-point agenda, they sought to respond to a number of things, one of which was the electoral cycle of violence. One was a question of exclusivity. The other one was about shared prosperity and corruption and other things. So you see the document then has now been able to crystallize into packages of what can be called implementation of what was their 9 points, some of which are going to come to Parliament by way of statutory legislations that we need to effect. And I think it's very important because when we talk about this initiative, people seem to focus on the BBI. There is a 3-tier part of this, which includes legislation, and I assume they're close to more than 50% of what is in the report is going to be by way of legislation.
Yes.
Then there is the policy part, which will go to Cabinet, and Cabinet will formulate policy, which can then come to Parliament by way of regulations and other things that need to be effected or sessional papers. There is, of course, the bigger issue now, which is the bill. The bill is here. The implication of this now is that the process properly kicks off. All the other things that we've been doing are really preparatory. When you look at Article 257, the formulation, the collection of views, the public participation, all those things are precursors to what Article 257 says is the trigger. And the trigger is that the bill is presented to IEBC. IEBC, of course, identifies the format in which the signatures will be collected.
Yes.
And then once we reach the threshold of the 1 million signatures, IEBC has 90 days within which to verify the signatures, and they could do it within less time, I hope. And then the bill can go to the county assemblies.
Yeah. Now, the launch comes as various groups have raised issues with proposals in the BBI report on the new structure of the executive and legislature and judiciary. But at this point where we are at, where we're collecting those signatures, it perhaps means that there's no turning back on this. What do you make of that element of this whole situation, Honorable Bunyasi?
What I see, and I've heard my colleague Honorable Watch, I think he has done well to describe the processes as defined in the law now. But what I see in terms of my assessment of the political public policy side of things,
yes,
is that starting off from March 9, 2018, up to now, we are in the same mode of the proponents leading the way, and the proponents is a fairly large critical group that has brought us to where we are. On the fringe of this, what these proponents are doing are those who have misgivings of various kinds. Some have outright objections, others maybe would like amendments done and so on. That opportunity seems to have been locked out. And what I see, Trix, as a potentially dangerous thing is that for those who have been locked out, or for those who don't even know yet what exactly it is they're going for,
yes,
because remember, this documentation has not been made publicly, easily accessible publicly.
Yes, yes.
We have great demand in the areas outside of Nairobi, like in my own constituency and county. People are saying, where can we get these reports? Where can we get these reports? They are still, fairly limited, actually rather limited to very latest people who may have had access. So when people discover the full import of it, I think they will get time to react, which may be after the referendum. And that, for me, I see that as the inherent danger for the 2023 elections. The people have woken up, what had happened? Because a large majority, other than the strong believers, still are unaware of it. That's, I think, we could have done it differently. We can still redeem it now. These technical processes that are being described are going to flow with the people who are willing and who are already converted. But I think that a vast majority of Kenyans, as they always do, are not yet on board on it.
Yes, Honorable Oloch, I'd like your reaction to that, the fact that we're having, for example, we're having people going by political leaders or perhaps political influencers. We have here a quote from Mr. Francis Atwoli, who says, "I'm attending the launch tomorrow, and as workers, we are ready to support the process because we know it will yield better results." But there are some people, as Honorable Bunyasi has pointed out, at the grassroots who have no clue what they will be signing on to. Now, what is your take on that, and also the issues that have been brought up about the executive, legislature, and judiciary?
Thank you. First of all, I think we need to look back to Article 257 for us to be able to contextualize and see the philosophical underpinnings of the procedure of a popular initiative as opposed to a parliamentary one. To be precise and to be sure, you can amend the constitution by parliamentary process. So I and Honorable Bunyasi were perfectly able and could initiate an amendment to the constitution if we wish on any of the issues. Only that when it gets to Article 115 on presidential assent, subclause 7, if it's a referendum issue, then the president refers it to IEBC. Now, speaking to the question as to whether it is right or wrong to have protagonists initiating, Article 257 does not criminalize anybody, including political actors. What it says is that there shall be promoters, and anybody and everybody from Wanjiku to the top are allowed to be promoters. Now, we should also understand that in the process of formulating an initiative and drafting a bill, it would be desirable that it should be done in a way that is non-contested, that the way people say. But that's not the crafting of the Constitution. This idea of let's have a negotiated approach to this thing is a political construct. But if you strictly look at the Constitution itself, it simply says, come up with an initiative, Convince 1 million people. If you don't, it collapses. Come up with a bill. If it meets the threshold, it goes to IBC and IBC ratifies it. And then take it to a vote. We do this all the time. Why don't we say in Parliament that let's have a negotiated approach to the passage of bills? It says there are bills you pass by a simple majority, and there are bills that you pass by two-thirds majority. That's the nature of the democracy. Let me speak to the last question about the democracy being the majority having their will and minority having their say. Let me take you through down memory lane. And people just woke up the other day to realize that this thing is a reality. There are people who have spent their entire lifetime for the last 2 years bastardizing and placing roadblocks on the BBI, and then all of a sudden are now interested in saying we need to be heard. You have a group of people after Bomas 1 gravitating around the deputy president who said that this thing, there is no need for us to read and validate, and that's what the president said. But what did the deputy president and his brigade say? Let's go to the referendum. You had all the bravado around Murkomen and Kuria and all those guys, including the DP himself, saying we don't even want to read. So after saying all those things, you cannot have your cake and eat it, and you cannot probate and approbate at the same time. So that process was preceded by a very, very elaborate. I've looked at these reports, and they are close to about 200 or 300 groups that presented their views. Very, very, very elaborate. And in spite of the fact that it went through Mashinani and listened to groups, to individuals, to institutions, it still opened up this to validation where it went county by county. After that, it was launched again at Bomas, and again it was said, let's read it again, and people have the opportunity. How many times will we keep on the same thing? Read, open, read, open, read, open. The thing must come to a stop, and let us agree that if your views are not captured into this, please go back to Article 57, and you will find that you are also perfectly entitled to bring another parallel one. And then you will engage us, and we will also critique you like you're doing now. But you cannot hold hostage the very same thing that you say, this thing is dead on arrival, it will not go anywhere. And then all of a sudden you want to have space into it. Let's be serious.
Okay, as has been done in the past. Now, we have the Deputy President and some religious leaders have called for a consensus, a much larger consensus, before we get to the more critical stages of this process. Honorable Bunyasi, what do you make of that push for a consensus?
It's interesting listening in to my colleague who is a lawyer.
Yeah.
But now he's, of course, commenting like a strong political proponent, which is exactly within his setting now.
Yes.
But the key thing here is, remember, this is a process being pushed by the proponents who are unfortunately acting as state agents. Right. The president and the former prime minister are acting as state agents, using state resources, being on the high pedestal of government talking and so on. The alternatives, those who are shouting on the margins, do not have the volume of resources for the state machinery to organize. It's a bit awkward, actually, to be honest. However, it is true that there comes a time when you have to lock out views and proceed forward. Okay. And if by so doing, you'll have won that battle. But the war is still on. The war is that some people believe, and I think Honorable Watch can debunk this, some people believe that this whole change is meant to provide opportunities for leaders that are looking for an opening in 2022. The arguments about it improving the welfare of the people and so on, this we have yet to see. Of course, there's a proposal of 35% going to the counties, but think of Kenya today. We can barely afford to transfer 15%. It's a good desire. Nobody can oppose a desire like that, but its practice would be a challenge. And I can go into some little detail perhaps later on what I mean by that, unless you restructure your budget in a way that you can accommodate that transfer to the counties, it's just going to be a dream. Because right now, they aren't able to structure the budget. They have no money to transfer to the counties. Last year, even, there was 30 billion that was in arrears. It means that struggling to meet today's 15%. I think we have to be realistic to see how we should move as an economy, as a state, to be able to provide for the Wanjikus, to have a society that truly believes it's supported from the bottom. Now, the biggest challenge to the thrust now is not going to be who will lead the no campaign. No, it's going to be that people are waiting to see, will this make a difference to my daily well-being?
Yes.
And it's very difficult to see through that now. That's the opposition to this. It's not the Rutos or the DP and other people who are making noise out there. The real opposition is going to be when it does not translate into improving living standards of the people. And unfortunately, because the time the referendum could be done, which is, they say, is around April next year, and the time we go to elections, may just be the time when people begin to discover the true import of the changes they were seeking to happen. So that's why I'm thinking that listening in and resolving those issues as we go forward will help in this second part of this battle. That battle will be the real determining factor as we go into the elections. Otherwise, people will discover that, oops, we have had a monster over us.
Right.
We have to carry this in some way or another, and to be too late. So consultation now is not bad. Even just listening in and hearing what people are saying. Of course, it's now been published. It means that the specific changes that are being sought at BBI are now on paper, and are not going to change it now because we're going into the referendum. But I think they should continue to listen in to people's views.
Yeah. Now, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we shall be discussing that, the launch of the BBI signature collection drive, as well as more issues surrounding the BBI, the referendum that might be happening. Remember, you can be a part of the conversation by answering this question. Will you be appending your signature in favor of the BBI referendum bill? Will you be appending your signature in favor of the BBI referendum bill? Matrix Ingado. The hashtag to use is KTN Morning Express. Also tag KTN News KE.